An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 86. The Great Fall. Daenerys tightened her grip around Jon's shoulders, holding him against her bosom as he wept softly. Shh, shh, my love. She kissed the crown of his head underneath the dark curls, praying for the wonderful man she married to find peace and joy once more, wishing to heap fire and blood on his tormentors. Let it out. I'm here for you.
He took her.
Jon whimpered. He nestled close to her, the rhythm of Daenerys' heartbeat the only thing that could keep him from completely falling apart in grief and mourning.
He took her away from me, Danny. He took them all away.
I know, my love. I know. Dany had never heard Jon so hurt, so broken. It tore at her heart and filled her with a terrible resolve of hate and anger. I wish I could have burned that monster alive. Had Balerion killed Littlefinger, the usurper, Tywin Lannister, and all of the other monsters. She meant it too. Fire and blood wasn't the Targaryen creed out of mere sophistry, but she willed the anger away, concentrating on the wonderful man before her. I love you, Jon. Her hold on him tightened even more. I love you more than anything in the world. If I could take your pain away upon myself, I would. She would give up her life for him, for their children. Do it in a heartbeat. Such was the depth of Daenerys Targaryen's love. Moments ticked by, with only the soft cries of a motherless boy piercing the silence. Of grief he had never truly allowed himself to express.
I could have had my mother, Daddy. Could have grown up with a family. Grown up with you.
Images danced in his head, of sparring with his father in the courtyard behind Maegor's Holdfast, of riding with his mother on the shores of Dragonstone, of reading the great epics with his grandmother in the library, of laughing and playing with his cousins upon a visit to Winterfell, of a lifetime with Daenerys by his side, never knowing a time without her in his life. A life that would have been his, taken away by evil men with only a lust for power.
I never would have been a bastard.
You were never a bastard to me. She held him ever tighter, willing all his past pain from him. He was good enough. He was perfect.
I never would have been without you, Danny.
The thought of growing up with Jon, being betrothed from him from the beginning. There was no real doubt as to what Rhaegar would have done, given the family legacy. Filled to Dany's eyes with tears as well. But we're here now, Jon. Here together, with our children and our family. Pulling him up by his chin, she placed a delicate kiss upon his lips, drifting across his skin to kiss away her tears.
I love you, Daddy.
His voice was hoarse, needing her. I love you too, Jon. She closed the distance to kiss him again. The sound of the door forced them open and pulled them apart. Jon! Seeing him, his eyes red and tear stains on his cheeks, Arya ran over and threw her arms around him. Behind her, the other Stark siblings slowly filed in. Sansa and Robb made their way to Jon's side as well, while Podrick, Mira, Gendry and Marjorie stood 2 paces back. Bran wheeled himself into a corner, lost in thought. Jon didn't want them to see him like this, but they brought him comfort by being here.
Thank you,
he breathed out.
No need to thank us, brother,
Robb said, patting Jon's back.
What that bitch did. Fuck!
Robb felt his own icy anger building at Littlefinger. For putting all of them through this.
Jon suffered the most, he thought. He's dead now, Jon.
Aye, The monster roasts in all 7 hells. Arya's voice was white hot. You deserved to have that life, brother. To be prince, to have your mother. Even if you wouldn't be our brother. You deserved it. Jon smiled despite himself. He felt the warm and loving hand of Daenerys on his shoulder. You would always be my siblings, even in the other life. You were always our brother, no matter what. He looked up at Sansa, who smiled down at him through unshed tears. Forgive me, Jon. I knew. Don't ask me how, but I knew Littlefinger's true intentions. Then why did you make him Master of Laws? Gendry was still a little angry, so his voice had a tinge to it. Quite Baratheon of him. Why didn't you just execute him? Sansa crossed her arms protectively. What better way to flush him out? Instead of Daenerys looking like a mad Targaryen, his crimes were exposed to all. He couldn't help but try to take down Arya. In that moment, Arya left Jon's hug and punched Sansa in the arm, coaxing a cry of pain from the hand. I'm not happy with you right now. Not happy. Her scowl slowly morphed into a smirk. But you are one shifty little bitch. Smirking to herself, Sansa nodded. I'll take that as a compliment. The two women hugged, whenever divisions torn into the pack repairing themselves. But how did you know Littlefinger caused Robert's rebellion? Marjorie asked. I know Bran had something to do with it, but how was he able to look? There's... The three-eyed raven was as blasé as ever. Before he died, he put it together. He knew to tell me where to look. And I did. He shrugged. Regardless, the last wounds of Robert's rebellion are healed. House Stark and House Targaryen can begin anew. Smiles formed around this statement. The wonderful moment of family comfort was broken by Ser Jorah, who threw open the door to the Solar. Your Majesties, Sam Tarly. Behind him walked, no, raced the portly maester. Sam, now is not the time. Daenerys normally was quite fond of Jon's best friend, but her love was in quite dire emotional straits. Hells, they all pretty much were. Jon needed this moment. Followed by what she planned to be a long night of tender love-making to soothe the pain in their hearts. Get the fuck out of here! As usual, Arya was far more blunt. Sam ignored both, setting a stack of books onto Jon's writing desk. Determination burned in his eyes, something not normally seen in him. Determination and terror. Forgive me, Jon. Your Highnesses, my lords, my ladies. But this is something I have to show you. Breathing deeply to calm his heart, Jon's comforted mood evaporated into apprehension at his friend's appearance. Sam, are you... shaking? Noticing the trembling in the Lord of Hornhill's hands, everyone began to grow worried. Is it the twins? Or Sarah? Worry grew in equal terror. Please tell me they're all right. Daenerys felt her own fist stab through her. No, they are fine. Gilly is watching them. Clenching and relaxing his fists over and over again to control his terror for the sake of his friend, Sam gestured to the stack of books. I've been poring over everything from the ancient texts, trying to find out what the Great Fall is. Great Fall? Gendry looked confused and wasn't the only one. What is that? A single book in hand, Sam took a seat opposite to Jon and Daenerys. Others crowded in around, listening intently. All mention it happening prior to the long night, but there were no descriptions of what it was. I assumed for the longest time it was something to do with a prophecy of the wall collapsing. He handed the book to Jon. But it was your father that cracked it. Jon narrowed his eyes at Sam. My father? What did Rhaegar find? Daenerys peered closely at the book as Jon opened it. That the Great Fall is something greater entirely. A signal. A herald that bathes the earth in darkness and ice. The Night King doesn't cause the long night. It causes him. Everyone was confused. What do you mean by it causes him? Marjorie asked. It is the source of all terror in the night. Heads turned to see Melisandre, cloak over her head as she entered the Solar. The fires. They burn bright tonight. the Lord of Light fighting against the pure darkness that will soon come, heralded by a force so massive that even Narth will tremble from evil. Suddenly Bran's eyes melted into milky white, the three-eyed raven shuddering as he passed into his walk state. "Bran! Bran!" he heard his siblings and his love say, but he was already vanished into the abyss of green sight. Line break. Trumpets blared into the darkness. Castle Black, a fortress that had existed for millennia, was a scene of veritable chaos trying desperately to organize itself into something cohesive. Steel scraped against scabbards and powder poured into hand cannon barrels as over 4,000 souls, speaking languages diverse as the common tongue to High Valyrian, readied themselves against an onrushing horde numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The end of the world had begun at the most desolate place in the Targaryen Empire, the edge of civilization. But the forces here were damned if they would let it come without a fight. The resonating snarls could be heard even atop the wall, hundreds of thousands screaming demonic shrieks as if a battle cry. Jaime Lannister felt frozen. It felt the coldest metal burning his skin.
"Why the fuck are they coming?"
It wasn't as if they could understand human emotion.
"The walkers," Beric answered. "They want to fuck with our minds." "It's working."
Already a steady stream of thousands were charging, led by a single walker.
"Knockmen!"
Over 1,000 archers drew their bows, arrows tipped with dragonglass. Rockets, scorpions, and cannon were primed. Below, the single line divided into three. Whites peeled off to either side, while a slower force pondered ever forward in the centre. Jaime did not hesitate.
"Loose!"
Projectiles flew, volleys flattening hundreds of the attacking dead. Dragonglass delivering clean kills, while the flaming rockets turned corpses alight, writhing pyres in the snow. But they kept coming. Mindless beasts bound as the perfect slave to the whims of the ice demons controlling them. As long as they shouted forward, the dead men, giants, spiders, and various other beasts would charge. Edison Tollett, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, had his sword drawn as he directed his men.
"Get the elevators going! We need the fiery hand atop the wall 2 fucking hours ago!"
Arms straining, the strongest Essosi auxiliaries worked with winches of the 5 large elevators, 4 of them having been installed with material from Winterfell, as the Emperor and Empress battled for the south. All in preparation for this night.
"Gran! Lord Commander?"
Trembling at the dispatch sent from above, Ed looked at his longtime friend.
"The dead will try to break through the wall. They have a ram."
"Fuck! It'll take half an hour to steal the tunnel." By then they would have had thousands and a walker storming Castle Black.
"I'm putting our hand cannons with you and your rangers."
He clasped his longtime friend's shoulder, as if they wouldn't see each other again. Very likely the case.
"If Lannister doesn't keep the bitches out, you need to hold. Hold the fucking gate as long as you can. Then hold it fucking longer."
Nodding, arms smacking together in brotherhood and camaraderie, Gren said his silent goodbyes to Ed as the other man dashed off to his post.
"This is very bad."
Podrick watched as hundreds leapt atop the ice, climbing like insects. On that note, they were joined by dozens of ice spiders. Deep thuds echoed through the ice as hundreds of others slammed a giant battering ram into the gate of the tunnel. The archers fired free, joined by roaring rockets and booming cannon. But it wasn't enough.
"We gotta do something about the fucking gate! Release the fire!"
"We need the fire if they swarm us!" a rather dim-witted brother replied, close to pissing himself. Beric ran a hand down his face in frustration.
"If they get through the gate, we're fucked. 4 inches of cold wrought steel. We have fucking undead ice monsters. Do you think they care? Ah, fuck it. Drop the fucking fire!"
Not hesitating a bit, the men in charge of the barrels of pitch let them loose. A gout of flame exploded skyward, incinerating nearly all the whites at the battering ram.
"Now that's how you fucking do it!"
The fire left the White Walker untouched. Stepping through, Icy hands spread out gusts of cold air that extinguished the still crackling flames. He said nothing as he raised his ice spear and slammed it against the steel. It frosted over, outworldly energy hissing and cracking the metal into something brittle. Something worthless. Gren watched, transfixed with fear and awe, as the massive gate, 4 inches of cold rolled steel, shattered like it was mere glass, flecks of metal falling to the snowy ground to reveal the lone walker, pure white hair blowing in the wind as he pointed directly inward, replaced by 100-strong swarm of wights and one immense undead giant. Torches flickered out from the sheer force of the horde charging forth. And only one steel gate between them and the 4 defenders.
Dear fuck!
Breathed a brother of the watch, further curses in High Valyrian from the hand cannoneers.
We must fall back! We hold here,
Gren muttered, levelling his sword, coated in dragonglass and sharp for battle. The swarm charged forth. Like ants, screeches echoed from their open mouths and rusted instruments of death levelled high. The giant's eyes glowed an icy blue, his head ghosting over the top of the tunnel.
There are too many of them!
Shouted one of the Giscari.
Mother, protect me, stammered a night's watchman.
Father, protect me!
There are no gods here, men. Only us.
Gren raised his sword high.
Night gathers, and now my watch begins.
The oath tumbled from his lips, firm and strong, urging resolve from his men.
It shall not end until my death,
began another, the mantra taken on by the other brothers, readying their swords and spears.
I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children.
The Essosi hand cannoneers joined, accents heavy but spirits ready to fight among their fellow men.
I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post.
Voices of the living boomed, shouting at the top of their lungs in defiance of the ever-charging undead swarm.
I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the shield that guards the realms of men.
Gren saw the hand cannons fall to the ready, taking aim at the mass of corpses.
I pledge my life and honour to the Night's Watch for this night and all the nights to come!
A screaming cry that rivaled the greatest dragon erupted from the men as the dead slant into the portcullis, powder discharging in a rippling sheet of flame.
Fuck you!
A mortally wounded former Goldcloak, barely standing but still able to scream a guttural cry, charged at a cluster of several wights. He managed to stab a dragonglass dagger into his heart, just as all tumbled off the battlements to the snowy expanse below. Jamie slammed his gold hand into a wight. Dragonglass shards he had the smith at the castle attached to it, embedding into its chest and distinguishing the bright blue of its eyes. Widow's wail swung to decapitate another, legs collapsing while the upper half fell below.
Cannons! Load shrapnel!
He barked, long pikes of the fiery hand fending off the ice spiders that brought up loads of the Night King's foot soldiers up the wall. Smaller ones hauled themselves over the lip, engaging with swords, axes and dwarf cannons as they launched off the ice at the defenders. A giant demon assaulted a battlement, only for Beric's fiery sword to slice off its front legs. Wailing an inhuman snarl, the former lord drive the blade between its mandibles, ending the beast for good. Another found more success, ripping apart 4 brothers manning a pitch station before a fiery hand archer loosed an arrow at a leaking barrel. The whole battlement went up in flames, the ice spider and the 3 wights atop its back joining it in death, along with the archer. 2 more giant spiders began putting themselves atop the battlements.
Fire!
The cannon fired their payloads over the open sights, dragonglass shrapnel slicing everywhere, like a wave of locusts that vaporized everything in its path. The spiders disappeared into mere chunks of dead flesh and shell. Jamie stabbed a smaller spider through the middle, Valyrian steel ending its tortured existence. "There's more coming!" one shouted. "Drop the scythe!" The Queen's Shield's voice was frantic. "Drop the damn scythe!" Sledgehammers dropped with a snarling battle cries. The ice groaned beneath their feet. Jamie felt it trembling, shuddering as breakaway chunks exposed a massive scythe 30 feet in diameter. "Dear gods!" murmured a young lad from the city watch. Never seen anything like it. With a shattering roar, it broke away, foot-thick chains screeching as it careened down the ice. Climbing wights and snarling ice spiders were crushed, annihilated. Cheers broke out, shouts of victory roaring from the mouths of the defenders. Jamie, sucking in icy breaths to calm his racing heart with terror, shook his head. This wasn't over. Far from over. "The men are fools," he said, watching the undead host just waiting among the trees. "Fools that can fight," Beric replied. "Something on your mind, Lannister?" While he could hear the faint shouts of chaos before, for the first time since the dead had arrived atop the wall, was quiet. Calm. Why are they doing that? He shifted, peering at the dead. Just waiting there. If they want to fucking swarm us, they should charge in force. A thought came to Beric's mind. "Fuck, where's the Night King?" An unholy roar answered his question. Above them, a sleek shape, as black as the night sky above, shot through the air. Jamie had barely seen it but for a moment, when it disappeared. "What the fuck was that?" someone shouted. "It's a demon! The demons are after us!" "Shut the fuck up!" Tightening his own hold on Widow's Wail, Jamie backed away from the edge of the battlements, ears and eyes peeled. Until he saw it. A monstrous black shape. Wings beating in the freezing cold air. "Dear gods, a fucking dragon," Beric stated. Sure enough, a giant dragon flapped by, maw opening in a booming roar. The Night King himself, on dragonback, urging the beast on. Jamie trembled, heart thundering in his chest at the sight. It was bigger than the Empress's mount, the Black Dread Reborn. A lot bigger. Wingspan the size of Casterly Rock, beating them to a stop, directly hovering only a few hundred yards from the centre of the battlements, staring at them. "Run!" Jamie screamed. "Peel off the sides!" The men ran, booking towards the far-off battlements dug into the top of the wall before the dragon could incinerate this section of the wall. Brave volunteers manned the horns, sounding the hoots of retreat, to save the men they could. But the dragon did nothing. Just hovered there, as the Night King raised his arms high in the air, eyes glowing a vibrant ice blue, as if surging with power. And then the darkness exploded in light. Line break. It was not of this world. A massive chunk of ice and rock, sailing through the endless void that surrounded the earth. Ever moving, darting and changing, losing mass as it approached the heat of the sun, and yet gaining it back when it hurtled into the black cold of the void. A cold so great that even the greatest dragon fire couldn't banish it away. An outworldly force, shrouded in a magic so ancient, only preceded by the divine. It only arrived close to the earth every 8 millennia, bringing with it the harshest of winters, as the demonic cold outmuscled the sun. And power. Immense power for one with the ability to wield it. 8,000 years before, the clan chieftain Xylus created such a being, driving a stake of dragonglass through Marden Stark's heart to erect a fighting force to defend them from the invading First Men. But such power proved too great to control once the new force arrived, imbibing him with the greatest power known to man or gods. Now, the streaking ball of ice and rock felt such a power exerted upon it. Draw it in a direction not intended to travel. The strain shook it. Massive earthquakes and volcanoes spewing ice into the void, rupturing the very crust. But the power it gave the being once known as Marden Stark proved its undoing. A large chunk broke off, larger than any mountain, than any city, drawn to the lands of always winter, to begin the long night, as a similar chunk had 8,000 years before. Line break. Good hand raised to cover his ears, Jamie watched in sheer wonder as a new sun erupted into the north. The far north. Farther than either men or God would know. 7 fucking hells, Beric muttered, all sound ceasing as the light stabbed through the air, banishing the night away. And then the sound. The earth-shattering bellow that flattened them to the ground. Fucking 7, it's coming! The wall of ice and snow. A giant cloud threatening to envelop them all in a blizzard. It's getting closer! Hunker down! Jamie burrowed into the back of an ice dugout, images of his one surviving child dancing through his mind. I'm sorry, Tommen. A sweet, kind boy, not deserving the hell Joffrey and Cersei put him through. I'm sorry. But the roar of the cloud ceased. Or mostly. It was still present, but faint. In the distance, Jamie stood and gazed in awe as a shimmering blue wall, the colour of the northern lights, blocked the cloud, encasing all of Castle Black and the army of the dead in a protective cocoon. The Night King's eyes glowed brightly, the colour of a blue star in intensity. The dragon's maw began to glow the same bright blue, head rearing back. Jamie gave the same command, already on the move. Run! Line break. It was at that exact moment the very earth shook. Despite thousands of miles separating the impact crater from King's Landing, it hit just the same. Walls shook, weak buildings collapsing, while stronger ones merely swayed, holding firm with nothing but cracks evident of the terror. The sea itself seemed to roll back upon itself, driven from its banks as ships bobbed within the port. Some slapped upon the shore, others capsizing where they stood. Screams predominated. So much screaming. Within the Imperial Solar, the Imperial family fell upon the ground. Some collapsed, toppling atop the tile floor. Others dove there on their own accord. Jon and the other men did what honour demanded, draping themselves over their wives and lovers to shield them from potentially falling debris. But Maegor the Cruel built his keep well, walls and ceilings strong as the dragons he commanded. As soon as it began, the tremors stopped, advancing further out like a ripple in a pond, leaving one of the largest cities on Earth to its own devices. Fuck! Arya groaned, wiggling out from Gendry's protective cover and rolling her shoulders. All around them her family did the same, while Bran began to wake from his graveside. Shit! What in the 7 hells happened? It happened. Fear cloaked Bran's face, grey eyes wide as they found Jon and Daenerys. The great fall happened. Dread seized John. His heart pounded, body shaking as invisible ice trickled up his body. And from looking at his wife, Daenerys felt the same. And the wall? It has fallen. Bran found himself in resignation. Acceptance for the coming destruction and death. Castle Black is destroyed, along with over 2/3 of our forces. Jaime Lannister barely escaped. How did he bring it down? Marjorie asked as Robb pulled her into a fearful hug. The Night King harnessed the power of the Great Fall, and he used his undead dragon to bring it down. All stared at him, with eyes as wide as saucers. A flagon of wine crashed as Podrick gaped. Arya felt her legs wobbling, collapsing into one of the couches. Robb turned as pale as a ghost. It was Dany who recovered first, eyes glazed with a surreal fright. A dragon? But that's impossible. Where would he... The long night of the past. A dragon from Valyria fought during it, and was lost in the battle for the dawn. He must have found its resting place north of the wall. Bran was cryptic, obviously not telling the whole truth, but none truly noticed. Too wrapped up in the sheer apocalypse that was unfolding before them. The wall has been brought down, the army of the dead marching through it. Rising, Jon looked over the vast expanse of the city, whose only worry at this point was the massive tremor that shook the city, unaware that this was only the beginning. So, that's it then? Bran nodded. Aye. The long night is upon us. End of chapter. Hi guys! Hope you enjoyed that one. Oh my god. Whoa. I hope the yelling and screaming was okay. I can't be too loud here. There are people where I am. Oh my god, it's finally here. So, here we go. So, yeah, whoa. Anyway, the one bit that really broke my heart though was Jaime saying sorry to Tommen. Oh boy, that's heartbreaking. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe, hit the bell to get notified, and have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-bino pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.